Hello, my name is Marvin Osei, a lecturer at the Electrical and Electronics Engineering Department, Sumani Technical University. This is a short presentation on the telecommunication courses that are available under the HND program. The telecommunication courses under the HND Electrical and Electronic program. It's a very good foundation if you want to pursue telecommunication as a career, or even if you want to further your education after you finish the HND program. So this presentation is going to give us some details on the various courses. So we talk about telecommunication 1, telecommunication 2, telecommunication 3, telecommunication 4. Then I'll give you some job prospects that are available when you decide to choose this option. Telecommunication 1, it's a core course or a mandatory course for all students who take electrical electronic engineering program. It's a semester 1, year 2 program. The objective of the course is to introduce you to telecommunication, so you understand what telecommunication is, and understand the various systems that are involved in telecommunication. Right. So it will give you a good understanding of what telecommunication is. Then we'll talk about measurements and units in telecommunication. We look at what signals are and the different forms of it. We look at what transmitters are, what they are used for. We look at transmission media and the different types of transmission media and the characteristics of transmission media. Then look at modulation, different forms of modulation, analog digital modulations. Then look at multiplexing and multiple access techniques that are available. Then we look at the frequency spectrum. Then we talk about some basics of antenna, the fundamental design of an antenna, some basic properties of antennas. Then we finalize with some receivers in telecommunication. Telecom 2 is one of the options among 4 options that are available for each of the students to choose. So the focus or the objective of this Telecom 2 is to give you detailed information about transmission media, the various components and parameters involved. So specifically, we talk about guided media and unguided media. We talk about signals, frequencies involved in transmission media. So under the guided media, we look at conductors, look at waveguides, and a waveguide, we look at microwave waveguides and optical fibers. Then we move on to unguided media. So we look at the radio wave propagation, microwave propagation, then free space optical communication. So we will do all of this in consonance with the different forms of frequency that are used under or in each of these specific media. Then we talk about antenna and its properties and parameters. Then we look at impedance matching, what impedance matching is, advantages of it, and what is important in telecommunication systems. Then we look at transmission line parameters and understand how useful those parameters are. Then we do some practical measurements such as field strength analysis and measurements. We look at voltage standing wave ratio, what they stand for, and we look at some other properties that are important in understanding transmission lines and their characteristics. Then we look at the Smith chart and how it is used. If you had chosen Telecoms 2 in your previous semester, then you'll be required to continue with Telecoms 3 in year 3 semester 1. This course focuses on some of the application of telecommunication in broadcasting and communication networks. So you look at the different frequency bands for sound and television broadcasting, as in television broadcasting and radio, FM radio broadcasting. Then you look at sound and television transmitters. We look at modulation systems in broadcasting. and look at television receivers and monitors. Then under communication networks, we look at the ISDN, what it is, what it stands for, how it's used. We look at asynchronous transfer mode, ATMs. We look at frame relay. We look at the SDH for fiber optic systems. So the Telecom 3 course is looking more on how some of the theories we've learned previously is applied. Telecommunication 4 is the final option that a student is mandated to take if he has taken telecoms 2 and 3. This gives a little detail or a little more detail on transmission lines and transmission media, but the emphasis will be on applications of the principle of transmission media. So under this, we look at wireless propagation in a little more detailed. Look at some of the applications with respect to GSM technologies from 1G to the 5G. We'll try to understand the cellular concepts. Then we look into microwave transmission. We understand a little more detail on what it involves. We understand fiber optics. We look at the different forms of fiber, cables, different forms of optical fibers themselves. Then look at some of the applications. Then we look at satellite communication, look at the different bands that are involved, different types of satellite communications. Then we zoom into grade of service and quality of service and other important parameters that are used in telecommunication. There are a lot of opportunities if you have a good route in telecommunication. So these are a few industries and companies that I kind of vet your mind to that telecommunication is very critical and also requires the services of people who have good knowledge in telecommunication. So I'll start with the power industry. So the power industry, we have BR, which is a generation company. We have Gridco, which is a transmission company. ECG, Netco, which are distribution companies. Car Power is also a generation company. So in Gridco, which is a transmission company, communicates a lot with all the generation companies, and there should always be a very reliable communication. Gridco also monitors all their substations across the country with the help of the communication medium. So communication is quite critical. So Greatel, it's in Gridco, is an upcoming company which will be focusing more on telecommunication. So watch out for that. Then we'll talk about the telecom industry proper. So we have MTN, Vodafone, Tigo, and the rest. They provide telecommunication and require the expertise and people who have knowledge in telecommunication. We also have Huawei, who provide a lot of technical support to these telecommunication or these telco companies. We have Main One, which focus on fiber optic communication. So there are quite a number of industries that require the services of people who understand telecommunication. And when you look at transportation, look at the airports, every plane needs to communicate to the airport's control centers. So reliable information and communication is very critical. Railway lines require reliable communication. Ships, ports, and harbor, all these places are places where communication is very, very critical. So they require the expertise of people who have vast knowledge or very reasonable knowledge in telecommunication. Then when you look at the mining industry, an example of some mining industry is the Newmont mines, Paisley's mines, AngloGold, Ashanti, and the rest. So they also require telecommunication and it's very critical, especially for the safety of their personnel, people going deep underground. They should be able to communicate back to the people on the surface in case there's an emergency or anything of that sort. And sometimes they also need to have a fair idea of what is happening underground. So all these things are powered by the communication media, and the expertise of people with knowledge in communication is also very important in these companies and industries. Then we look at television and radio. So there's a lot of radio stations around, a number of televisions around. All these people broadcast their um, services, so they require the expertise of telecom people. So, example, it's KeyNet, you have MultiChoice, which provide GoTV and DSTV services. We have GVC, the Garlic Broadcasting Company. Then we have Media General TV3 and the other media. So all these companies require the service of telecommunication people who understand how to transmit signals. You know, in the oil and gas industry, like Ghana Gas, Tullow Oil, Cosmos, so Tullow and Cosmos, they do drilling services offshore. So they able to have to be able to communicate with people who are onshore, and they also have to be a lot of communication between even the people who are working on the ships and things like that. And sometimes it's very, very important for the safety of the engineers so that we can monitor how the engineers are doing remotely and all of that. So it's very critical. Then we have traditional IT companies. So some very important IT companies in Ghana is like Comsys. We also have Google. Google is doing fiber optics in Ghana. And if you have a good knowledge in fiber optics, which is under telecommunication, your service will be required. Comsys is a company we provide a lot of backbone for the banks in Ghana, including Bank of Ghana. So a company like that also requires people who have understanding on telecommunication system. Then the emergency and the security services, like the Army. Army have a dedicated department who they call the signals, where because in the Army information is critical, reliable communication is critical. People who are on the field, who if there's a need to call for backup and all of that, reliable communication is critical. Then we have the police, we have the ambulance services. And recently, the 112 was launched for the emergency services. So all those things are powered by the telecommunication infrastructure. Then we also have the banks, so like EcoBank, ABSA, Bank of Ghana. Their ATMs are connected to their central systems. All the banks in different locations, branches are connected. So if you have an account here, you can go and access your details from a different branch, and all of these things are powered and have a backbone by the help of the telecommunication infrastructure. So they require people with this expertise. So there are a number of prospects, there are a number of opportunities if you decide to focus or get a broader scope in telecommunication by selecting the telecommunication option. So in conclusion, I would say that if you decide to choose the telecom option, it's a very good step that you've taken. Some students have a feeling that when they decide to choose telecommunication option, then they will be limited. The fact of the matter is that if you decide to choose telecom, it rather broadens your scope, which will give you, bigger and sometimes better opportunities. So it widens your scope and it helps you grab different opportunities in the electrical and electronic sector. So I believe this presentation, has enlightened you, and going forward, I believe you have the confidence if you want to choose telecommunication. And remember that it will not limit you either in power systems or either in electronics or any other area that you have in mind, but it will rather expand your scope and give you more opportunities. Thank you for your time.